Welcome to the two-time award-winning podcast, the Popko Project. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. This is awesome because I feel like I've been on your podcast, in spirit because I hear left and right that I get name dropped, and I've never had a chance to actually be a guest on your podcast. So this is finally pretty awesome.
Well, it's funny because we trashed you on the episode with Prospector.
Yep.
We wanted
Heard
we
about
wanted
it.
we wanted to bury you in the ratings so you couldn't afford your Starbucks coffee. JK, just JK.
Of course, of course.
And then just released today. Today is Wednesday, the 21st of September. I'm not sure when this episode will drop, but released today was Candle in the Dark, and we
Yep.
talked to Dave about you and your pink heels. I'm assuming you're wearing your pink heels right now as we speak, getting ready for
I'm
tomorrow.
not. I am not wearing them. And Dave is a great guy, by the way. Dave from Candle in the Dark, awesome dude. No, I'm not wearing them. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that because the whole reason I'm doing it is I'm part of that Paint Piston Pink Gentleman's Dash, which by the time this drops, I'll have done it already and hopefully have not broken my ankle. But it's a 50-meter dash in high heels, and I got like these stupidly big stiletto type shoes, and I probably should practice, right? I haven't done that yet. The only time I've worn them was on PA Live, and they were not comfortable at all. They were not comfortable at all.
I don't believe it.
I will tell you, though, that as you and Dave were talking about that event, you mentioned that I was going to go all out and try to win, and hell yeah, I am.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, of course I'm going to want to win that dash.
Well, before we get too much further, we should probably let the people know who you are.
Okay.
Mike Duffy.
Are you doing that or am I?
I'll do it.
Okay.
And you can elaborate if you'd like. But Duffy is the program director and midday guy at 97.9X, and I think some other stations as well. But 97.9X is Northeastern Pennsylvania's, I guess, number one rock station?
Yeah, sure.
Or rock station. Like,
I mean, look, yeah, we are the rock station here in Northeast PA. We're the only station that plays the stuff we play for the most part. We're the station you go to if you want to hear Breaking Ben, you want to hear, I don't know, Five Finger Death Punch, the new, Stained, whatever. If it's new music, we're going to be playing it. So,
right. And do you care to elaborate on anything else, other stations that you're on?
Well, I do. So you mentioned I do middays here in Northeast PA. So I'm on the air 10 to 3 at 97.9X. I'm also on our station out in Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan, the rock station Z93. I do afternoons there. And then I do a Saturday out in Boise, Idaho on KKGL. So I'll do a midday Saturday afternoon out there. So, just helping out. I really enjoy being on the other stations too, because it gives you a chance to, it's weird because I actually think I do better sometimes on the other stations because I don't, I'm from this market. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. My family's here. My friends are here. I grew up here, went to high school and college here and all that. And for some reason, I think that sometimes plays on me, and when I'm out in Michigan, I can just, relax and be a little more loose and not necessarily care. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, no one's going to see you out and be like, hey, I heard you mispronounce so-and-so's name wrong, you idiot.
Well, and that's not necessarily true because I was actually just out there. I was out there for an event. So I spent a couple of days out there hanging out and being a part of it and, mingling with listeners. And every single one of them called me out for something. It was fun. It was a good time.
Well, that's good. Well, yeah. I mean, 97.9X is owned by Cumulus, who has stations all over the country. So that's pretty neat being a part of a station that size.
Yeah, it is. It's a good company. I really enjoy who I work for. I mean, locally, I've got a great boss. I've got great coworkers. Corporately, I like who I work for. I mean, they're good to me, so I can't complain. I'm still employed. That's always a plus. You know how that works. We've been in this game a long time.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like, and we'll get to all that. You've been I think at all the major clusters. But
I have.
before we get into that, and it's going to be funny because I said this to Prospector, I said it to Hoover, I said it to Neil Trauma. I feel like I'll probably get to know more about you tonight than the combined years that I've known you, which is probably. I mean, I know I've known of your name for probably 20 years, but I got to work with
Yeah.
you back in 2013, and I've known you pretty well since.
Right.
But before we get into that, like, I mean, who is Mike Duffy? I mean, are you from here? Like, do you how did, outside of you being birthed by your mother, like let's talk about
Yeah.
Mike Duffy, coming up as a child.
Yeah, because we don't really need to know that part. That's a little
No,
too in depth. I don't know
yeah.
that my mom would be happy
Well,
relating that story.
here's the joke. I say that, like, I mean, how did you start? And everyone's like, well,
Yeah.
my mom gave birth
Yeah.
to me. I'm like, I don't want to hear about that. So
No,
I
no
kind
one
of
wants to hear any of that.
I want to nip that in the bud. So
So in high school, I picked up the guitar, and music's always been an important part of me. I'm a huge Van Halen fan. You know that because we've worked together. I'm a huge fan of music in general. I can listen to almost anything. I picked up the guitar. I played in band in high school. I've played in bands, cover bands over the years. So when I was looking for something to do in high school, like, what am I going to do? I initially was a music major. I applied to two schools. I was accepted to two schools as a music major. And right before my first performance exam at Marywood University, where I ultimately went, I thought to myself, what the hell am I going to do? I don't want to teach, and I'm really not good enough at anything else musically to be a professional stage musician, like in an orchestra or something like that. And I'm like, well, how can I stay connected to music in some way and, have a career? And at a career fair at my high school, I stumbled upon the radio and TV program, and I thought, wow, that's cool. I could, do radio. Ultimately, ended up spending more time on the TV side, which is, by the way, where I met Prospector for the first time, because he's also a Marywood alum. I will remind people that I don't think he graduated. I did.
oh, burn, burn. Oh,
He left. He left, but I think he finished later, much later. Anyway, I spent more of my time there at Marywood on the TV side. We were required to do radio shows and all that kind of stuff. And it was an alternative station there, and we reported to the College Music Journal and all that kind of stuff. But, from there is when I landed my first internship and ultimately my first professional job over at KRZ, which was kind of cool. And I spent a good chunk of my career there. In the beginning. So, it's the interest in music, the love of hearing it, breathing it. Music means something to a lot of people. I would be surprised if you couldn't find someone that didn't relate music to, important parts of their life, things that have happened. And certainly I'm no different. I just get a chance to work with it every day,
Yeah, music is very powerful, and that's one reason why I keep forcing my way somehow into
right?
what I do in my life, because obviously I'm not with a radio station. I'm not with any form of media any longer. But yeah, it's a very powerful thing. And you mentioned you started at KRZ. KRZ was at one time, I don't know the chain, but when I knew it was Entercom. Now it is Audacy. Talk about, I mean, KRZ started, I believe, in 1980. It hit the airwaves. And it's one of the biggest
signed
stations.
on. Yeah, it is. They signed on in 1980. Obviously, Jeff Walker, everybody knows he's one of the original jocks hired in 1980. So, and he's still there, and that's unheard of in our industry. You don't stay in one place for that long, nearly as long as Jeff has. In this market, I started as an intern with the Rocky and Sue show, ultimately became a part of that show and was there for 14 years. Rocky and Sue are like family to me. They're not even, I wouldn't even say they're friends. They're my family, because I've spent so much of my professional life with them and got to be so close to them that, a lot of the things that I learned about how to do this job, I learned from them. I'd like to think that I learned how to do it the right way, thankfully, because I did have a good long run there. And I kind of bounced around different time slots and, while always doing mornings, but did other things there. And I, had a good run there. Ultimately got let go on a budget cut and moved over to Shamrock, where you and I both worked. Spent some time working on Rock 107. Ultimately got moved over to the alternative where you and I were at Fuzz 92.1. And then, same thing, budget cut, and boom, now I'm at 97.9X. So and that's kind of the way our industry is. People move around. So I think it's interesting that you noted, I can't remember who it was, whether it was Hoover or Prospector, you were talking about it. There's no real bad blood or we're all friends in this business. I still am friendly and count those guys at Shamrock my friends. I've got people, at the other clusters that are my friends. There's no reason to be. I mean, look, are we competitive? Sure. Do we want to beat each other? Of course, that's our job. But, outside the building, we're still friends. I literally just talked to Prospector a week ago. I called him up on my way to Battaglia's up in Scranton for something. And I'm like, dude, I haven't had a chance to look at the new specs on the iPhone. Is it worth getting the Pro over the regular Pro over the Pro Max? And we were going back and forth about that. And I said to him, you're absolutely right. You never, ever, ever, ever pick up that phone and call to make plans for dinner. I'm like, so we're going to have to do that. Him and his wife and myself and my wife.
You better stay on that because he will.
I know.
Will find a way out.
Yeah, no, I know he will. We'll get down to it, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I don't feel like going." I think I've spent more time cycling with him, doing like the Tour de Scranton or the Endure or whatever it is, him and Rocky from KRZ, than I have in actually hanging out socially and going to dinner or whatever. So, but that's cool. That's that's the way it should be. Just because we compete, just because we work for, we're in the same industry, but we compete against each other doesn't mean we can't be friendly with each other. I never understood that whole you work for the competition, so you're the enemy thing. It's never been the way I've approached working in my industry. So
never,
not once. Never.
See,
because I like to think, I'm a reasonably, easy to get along with person. I don't think there's any reason for that kind of stuff. Obviously there's probably going to be people that don't necessarily mesh personality wise, but that doesn't mean that they are your quote unquote enemy. You know what I mean?
See, I can't say the same about myself. I can't say it.
Yeah, when you were Johnny Weekender back in the day, you were all about it, and that's it, man. If you worked for anybody else, I remember.
Not anybody. It was
well, the competition is what I mean.
The print, yeah,
right. The print competition, sure.
Yeah, they were more of like just a pest, and it's funny that it's how things happen. You're a prime example. Entercom and Shamrock and Cumulus, and I went from the Times Leader group that owned the Weekender to Times Shamrock that one time had Electric City, and so it's funny how things happen. But yeah, I don't think it was a fault, but I was a hardcore. I almost got a Weekender tattoo.
Wow, that is entirely too hardcore.
Well, not because I was in love with it, but it was more this is part of my life. It's part of who I am. I lived, breathed like everything, that newspaper, that Entertainment Weekly. And I wanted to bury anybody else trying to do the same thing. It's funny now how things are. And I don't know if it's just that I got older or maybe I, matured a little bit or realized that that's not the way to be. We're better together than we are trying to, step on each other's necks. Sure. But I don't know. For me, I wanted to be number one. I grew up watching Michael Jordan. He's a prime example of he's going to beat you and then step on your neck on the way out.
Sure. And I think that mentality is fine, but you can leave that, in my view, at the studio door. Once you walk out the studio door or when you're walking out of the building, you can leave that stuff behind you. I think you can still be competitive, but at the same time, you can still be friendly and, sure. Cool because, especially in this day and age, as you well know, and I'm a great example of, you never know who you're going to be working with next, know? And the last thing you want to do is either create and leave a bad impression about yourself to your future coworkers or potentially your future bosses. It doesn't make sense. It's not the way to do it.
I was never mean.
No, and certainly not suggesting you were, but it's just not that. I don't think that's how I would approach it. I would rather everybody be cool and look. Let's compete on the playing field when we have to, and then when we're not competing, we can still be cool.
Yeah, we'll sing Kumbaya. And
I don't know about that. I don't think I want to hear you sing Kumbaya.
Row a boat together or something.
Yeah, something like that.
you kind of sped through your career in radio, and it spans 1,000 years.
I have been doing radio a long time.
You may be old as dirt, but you don't look at it. You don't look at it at all. You look young. You look
younger.
I appreciate
than me. That, man.
You look younger than I am, but you sped through your stages, and obviously what you said just now, like, keeping it cordial and keeping, the positivity and keeping the, hey, we're in this together type deal. I mean, that would not have happened. Your career would not have been the way it was had you not have been. But I mean, talk about KRZ and your time there. I mean, you were Psycho Mike, right? Is that the?
I was, when I got hired there, it was a completely different time in radio. In the mid '90s, I started there in 1995. I started as an intern with Rocky and Sue, and I eventually worked my way up to being, a full-time, full-fledged person on that show, their producer and a third personality, and learned how to do the job, learned how to be a radio professional from those guys, and in that time. And I think a lot of what I've taken from there, I've carried forward into every other thing I've done. I learned one of the best pieces of advice that Sue gave me back then was, make yourself invaluable. Make sure you know how to do more than just your job. And I've always taken that advice with me. I eventually got good at screening phone calls and trying to be a personality and, anticipating the needs for Rocky and Sue to, help prop up their show. But I was also pretty good in doing production, putting commercials together, doing the imaging, all the stuff you hear in between the songs. So I did that. Helping out at events, I tried to do a little bit of everything, some very, very, very light troubleshooting if something broke, because when you're doing a radio show and something breaks, you still have to do your show. It's not like you could just flip it on and say, hey, we'll be back when we fix this, unless there's dead air. So, we just try to do as much as I can, learn as much as I can. And I took that mentality through that 14 years run there, which, that was. Yeah, it was a pretty good run there. I started in 95. I ended up leaving in 2008. And quite honestly, it wasn't fun for me to be let go from there, because I honestly thought I would have been there for my entire career. I was very naive at that point about how radio worked then. But that stretch of my career also coincided with a lot of things happening in my personal life. I got married. I got engaged on the radio. I got married. My daughter, who is going to be 20, literally a few days from us taping this, was born early, I might add, premature. And, I took a couple of weeks off from work when she was born to be able to be home and help out and get used to having a baby that had, that was a little earlier than expected. But then eventually, talked about that on the radio. So a whole chunk of my life played out on the radio, because that's how it was done then, So it's interesting to look back on that time and realize just how many phases and things of my life happened in that chunk. You know what I mean? And it was cool. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it, and I made some great some great relationships there too, and people that I still talk to. Like I said, Rocky and Sue are still two of my closest friends. I consider them family. I was just talking to Rock the other day, as a matter of fact.
You mentioned you kind of shared your life on the radio, and at that time of our lives, like, we in 2022 we share literally everything. We have lunch at I don't know, Peculiar Slurp Shop. We're sharing it on Facebook. What was it like sharing your life? And I mean, obviously, you didn't touch on it, but you kind of alluded to it in your tone. Your daughter was born early, and I mean, that had to have been kind of difficult.
It was stressful, dude. I remember. So at that time, obviously doing mornings, I would get done working at like noon, pick up my wife. We would drive down to Danville, because there was no NICU here back then, and that's like an hour drive, right? So we'd stay there all day until the NICU shut down for the night at 9 o'clock. We would pick up some fast food and drive an hour back. I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning, do the morning show, and then do the exact same thing again for 56 straight days. It was a very long 56 days, but it's just, I was lucky to be able to do that, because doing mornings, I got to be done at noon and could get to go down to the hospital and spend the day with my daughter and all that kind of stuff. So, the trade-offs and, everything works out for a reason. And having that career at that particular time and being on that in that time slot, it just all worked out for the best for me. And, it allowed me to do things I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I had a normal 9 to 5 type job. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but yeah, and it's weird because, people back then would talk to me and, if we go out for coffee, they're like, hey, how's your daughter doing? Like they would know her name, obviously. They know my wife's name, my name. When you're talking about every single thing you do, people ask you about it. And in some respects, it's kind of cool. Well, in all respects, it's kind of cool that people care that much about your what you have to say and what you feel and what's going on, that they listen that intently, that they feel like they've become friends with you, and that's kind of cool. And I've met listeners that I've talked to over the course of years, and it's cool and that even still happens now. I had. Motionless and White was just in town at the Pavilion at Montage Mountain, and I did a Zoom interview with Chris Motionless, and I offhandedly said, because my 9-year-old son Michael's a huge fan, and he said that he wanted Chris to teach him how to scream correctly because he's into that. And Chris is like, well, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll teach him how to do a bleh. And a listener at the show pulled me aside and said, hey, did your son get a quick vocal lesson with Chris? Did he teach him that? I'm like, well, we didn't get a chance to know, but it was still pretty cool that he offered to do it. So those kind of things still happen, that people pay attention. And that's, I think that's a kind of a really, really, really cool thing, that, people are invested in what we have to say. You know what I mean?
What's that like? I mean, you have a 20-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old son. You've been on the radio their entire lives. Like I always said, I was Johnny Weekender well before my son was born, and Johnny Weekender was dead well before my son was born. And then I actually was working in radio. I got a local radio show on air,
Lincoln wasn't born yet then, right?
He actually was, yeah. Well, I started in 2017 in August. He was born in December of that same year. So I was on air for almost 3 years. For when he was alive, but he's a kid. He's like
right, not enough to make the connection.
I always knew that, or I always had a feeling that I would, kind of fall from grace, so to speak. By the time he ever knew, what any of this ever was. Yeah. What's that like for your kids? I mean, that's got to be pretty neat.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I have this conversation with my daughter constantly. Who, by the way, works for us part-time now at Cumulus as a remote tech.
Nepotism, right? What?
Yeah, right? That never happens in Northeast PA. That doesn't happen at all. Come on.
Next thing I know, to be a teacher.
That's what she's studying. And
anyway, Who do you know?
That's right. Seriously though, when she was younger, it was cool at first because she got to hear Daddy on the way to work, to school, and her friends knew, and blah blah blah. And then as you get older, it's like, he's been doing this a while. It's not that big a deal. It's cool though when you can get to meet people that you're listening to musically, you get to go backstage and that kind of stuff when it happens. And then there's the thing where oh, your dad, I know your dad from this, or I know your dad from that. It's like, how does she get away from that is the big thing now. It's like, oh, I know your dad from the radio, or did you see your dad did this? I heard your dad do that. Your dad's going to be over at this show, or so I think it gets old after a while for her. Now my son is at the beginning of that, where it's cool again, so he's into it, because he gets to meet Chris Motionless or whatever, and sure. He'll go to a concert with me because we like the same style of music. My daughter does not, by the way. So I fully expect him to get to that point where he's like, yeah, I don't really care about this anymore. It's it's not that cool to me anymore. And then we'll hit that point where everybody comes to him because they know of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm sure at some point he will get to that where it's not that exciting for him too. My daughter's here somewhere. I should probably yell up to her and have her come down and ask her what she thinks about that.
I mean, she definitely wants to be on the number one podcast.
Oh yeah, she wants to be on the number one podcast. Of course she does.
Well, yeah,
she wants to be on with podcast.
Well, 2022 podcast of the year. So I mean,
that's important.
Whenever she can grace us with her presence.
Yeah, and when I see her down here, I'll grab her and see what she thinks about that.
If she wants to be exposed to 5 viewers or listeners, I mean, I can make it happen.
You have at least 6. Come on now.
Okay. Me, my wife.
I was listening earlier.
Yeah, you'll watch this. Yeah, because I made you. I told you we wouldn't do this. You wouldn't be on the podcast,
Right.
the number one podcast, if you didn't listen to it. No, but seriously, that's really cool. I mean, and I'm hoping that I can continue to, and not for any like vain reasons or things like that, but like I it's cool to be a father and be looked up to, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I get it. It's cool. It's cool when your kids think you're cool. You just have to be prepared for when they don't, because they will eventually not think you're cool anymore. And I try very hard not to be cool on purpose. So, as you well know, I like irritating people on purpose, which is why we do all the puns that we used to do back in the day, Pun theater, my man. Inside joke.
We were on to something though. I mean, like, I think we were doing that. Like, I don't think radio stations kind of utilize their social media on an effective level. And like we started these videos, and we started because you kept using them all the time, and I couldn't stand it.
Oh, I know.
Now there was a lot of acting, like top-notch acting, by the way. I must admit, by myself, right? But yeah, these puns, terrible. I think you had one earlier for me. And
I did. What kind of concert only costs 45 cents? A 50-cent concert featuring Nickelback.
Nickelback, yeah. I knew. I was going to say it. I kind of knew that.
Yeah, you knew where I was going. But yeah, and I'm thinking too, Johnny, that you want to be cremated because, it's the last hope for you to have a smoking hot body. The best part about that is there's partially some truth there, right?
You're not wrong. That's why it's funny.
I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong. We had some good times there.
There were some good videos. I wish they still lived somewhere.
The one with the clock, where you were eating lunch or I was eating lunch. No, you were eating lunch and I came out, and that's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite. That was a good one. I wish we had that you could throw up here, but unfortunately it's lost in the ether of space of internet.
Yeah, there was one too. I remember you came to the back office and I had a pair of scissors in my hand and I was going to cut you.
Yeah.
I forget what that was.
They were good.
Something about carpets or umbrellas or I don't.
Who knows?
I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, you're a nerd. What can I say?
It's the truth. I literally getting my coffee this morning from Starbucks. The barista who I see like every day, because I go to Starbucks every day, even down here, which we used to do all together. You, me, Prospector, Hoover, all that stuff. And she mentioned that I had she liked my Star Wars T-shirt. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a nerd. Today's Andor coming out, so of course I'm going to have a Star Wars T-shirt on.
I literally hate May 4th every year.
May the 4th be with you.
I hate it. I can't stand it.
It's amazing.
Somehow you're always the first person that pops up in my feed on social media. And I'm like,
of course, I have to be. Got to post something about it. I'm going to start texting you now that you said that on May the 4th. I'm going to set a reminder. Text Johnny Popko.
and then you guys don't even let up. It's like the next day.
No, is Revenge of the 5th.
Yeah.
Revenge of the 5th, man. You got to keep it going.
Yeah. What did I hear? Did I hear your daughter?
No, I think that was my son. Okay. Hey, Abby.
Yeah.
Come here.
I thought
she's in the other room. She's coming over.
I thought somebody was like, "Oh, here goes Dad again with these nerd jokes."
Oh no, she's reluctantly coming over. It'll take her about. Oh, here she comes. Come here. You're gonna jump on a podcast with us real fast. It doesn't matter what you look like. Don't worry.
I've got a quick question. No one's watching.
This is Johnny Popko. She can't hear you because I'm wearing an earpiece, but he wants to know if it's cool or not. Do you think it's cool, or do you still think it's cool that I work on the radio?
Sometimes.
Yeah, when you're not talking about May 4th and
when I'm not talking about May the 4th for Star Wars Day. Mm-hmm. Is that about right? Is that about accurate? So, yes. You did find it cool at one point, right?
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. Don't look at me. Look at him.
Yeah.
Ask her how she feels being on the podcast.
How do you feel being on the #1 rated podcast in Northeast PA of 2022? It's pretty cool, right?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
I know.
She's going, all right, good. You can go back to whatever you're doing. Okay.
Thanks. I think I printed that shirt.
Oh, did you really? You might have. It's very likely.
So. I think we printed
It's very likely. Yeah.
Shout out Axelrad.
Okay, you got your own coffee bugs, man.
Oh, yeah.
When do I get one of those? Don't guests get that for appearing on the program? I mean, come on.
These are new shirts I got made. It's $15.
Oh my God. Oh wow, look at that. I'm not going to be ever able to get rid of that image now from my head.
$15 and it's yours.
All right, fair enough. 15 whole American dollars, huh?
All right,
it's
very soft.
I got you.
Printed
I like it.
Quality prints at Axelrad Screen Printing. Shout out.
How about I just trade you one? Like I'll send you a, I'll send you a 97.9X one. I mean, that seems like a fair deal, right?
All right, that's fair. I can get on board with that.
Or you can just grab one from the last order I just did at Axelrad.
Yeah, I'll just print it myself. I don't care.
You just print it yourself.
What am I doing to paying this guy? Get out of here.
Yeah, right. What do you got in that? You drinking beer or what?
It's water.
Yeah, I'm just doing Propel, so nothing exciting here.
It's definitely not beer.
Yeah, it probably should be, though. This conversation would go so much better, right?
It's definitely not beer.
No, couldn't have been.
Might be. I don't know. But all jokes aside, I mean, you had a 14-year run at KRZ. That's pretty good.
I did.
Obviously, we know the climate that is radio and any media, really. And any media really is very, maybe fickle is a good word, but it's very here today, gone tomorrow. It's a very what's the word I want to use? I don't know, but uncertain. I don't know, but it's kind of scary. Like you never know what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's always changing. Technology does that, whether it's our industry or other industries, and you kind of have to roll with it. And you have to be willing to understand that those changes and challenges are going to happen, and you have to be able to learn new skills and not just say, well, I only do this. You've got to be able to do this, and this, and be good at all of them, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, because I think it keeps you engaged. I think it keeps you learning new skills, which is important, because at some point you're going to need them for something else, right? Whether it's in your professional career or your personal life. At one time I actually taught radio at Keystone College for a couple of years as an adjunct, which is a completely eye-opening experience. Just because you think you know a lot about the industry and you are going to get to teach kids how we do things, it's a different world. They see it differently than we do. Radio for sure, and the world. It was a very eye-opening experience, I can tell you that. I did that, just one class a semester when I was at Shamrock with you. It was fun. It was stressful. I do not envy teachers. I mean, they certainly deserve every dollar they get, whether you're at the elementary level or the college level, because kids are not fun to deal with sometimes. Let's be honest. I mean, you're a parent, you get it.
My kids are, I don't want them to grow up because they're perfect right now. I don't want them to be teenagers, and especially my daughter. Punks. I don't even want to.
Yeah. Wait till she starts dating, dude.
I don't want to think about that. But what I was getting at with being at KRZ for 14 years, and you said budget cuts and led to your dismissal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how was that? I mean,
it sucked, man. It sucked, and I'll tell you what. I think that I will tell you this, and I don't know if I've ever said this to them, but I really damaged, I think, my relationship at that time with Rocky and Sue, because I was really bitter about being let go, and I kind of walled myself off from everyone there for a while, and I shouldn't have, because obviously it's not their fault. They're not the ones making the decisions. But I just did not want to. I just did not want to be bothered by anybody. I did not want to be associated with that. That brand, that company, any of that stuff. I was like, I'm just out of here. I was checking out, and then I was, misguided in that.
But that, I mean, I hindsight's 2020, right? But like,
sure,
you were in a relationship for 14 years. Think about if that was a girlfriend, like how you would treat them or how you would act towards them. It's like, I mean, and I'm sure that Rocky and Sue to this day would say, yeah, we get it, man. Like, it's fine. But like, I don't think how you felt, you should feel bad about that.
Maybe not. I mean, I see your point, and I get the analogy, and it's pretty spot on. But at the same time, again, they're my family. There were different ways to handle that. And in hindsight, if that being 2020, if I had a chance to do it again, I would certainly do it differently. Because look, at the end of the day, it's a business, and people are doing what they got to do. I will be honest and say, the second time that it happened to me, when I got let go at Shamrock, it was a completely different experience for the most part because, I had been through it once already. I kind of knew what to expect. And I had a landing spot, a lot quicker than the first time around. And ultimately, it ended up being a blessing in disguise because I got to a place where I never thought I would be. I never thought I would be in programming. It was never my intention getting into radio or, I'd never done programming in the 14 years I spent at KRZ. I'd never done that at Shamrock when I worked a little bit at Rock 107 and then at Fuzz 92.1. I always thought on air was going to be the big driver for me, and being in morning drive at some point. I mean, I wanted to have a morning show that had my name on it. For a little while, for like one ratings book, I was partnered with Prospector, and that was great because we had a lot of fun. It ultimately didn't work out, but from the management perspective, but it worked out for him in the long run, which is great because he is great at what he does by himself. I think ultimately I probably would have needled him daily and gotten under his skin to the point where he's like, yeah, I can't work with you. But we had a great time working together. And so, ultimately moving over to where I'm at now and, being in charge of our radio station was a new challenge that I'm like, this is awesome. It's really great. It's stressful sometimes because, you're responsible for everything and you're held to different standards. But at the same time, it's been a great, I look at it as a great resurgence professionally for me, because there was a time when I was like, I'm really done with this. I'm done with radio. I've had it. The industry is just not the same, but I don't feel that way anymore because I've got a new challenge that, has really, I feel like, brought out the stuff that the passion, I guess, the things that I loved about radio the first time around when I first got into it. It brought that back for me. So, and every day is a new challenge, and we get to do fun promotions. We get to put together events. We get to do stuff that, I like to think that not a lot of other people are doing here in this market. So, it's fun.
I don't want you to start painting the picture too pretty yet. Let's talk.
You're going to just hammer it down a few notches then, huh? All right, go ahead.
I said I wanted to learn about you, and that I would learn more about you now tonight than I've known before. And obviously, people, that watch or listen to this, maybe they want to, learn more about radio, and we're kind of giving them an inside look as to how up and down it could be. Mm-hmm. You went from KRZ. How long were you between?
A year and a half.
That's a long time.
It is a long time. You figured that was 2008 when the economy kind of tanked.
Sure.
And I thought, well, this is not going to. Here's the thing, too. When you're in radio, typically moving around is expected. You're going to move to different states. You're going to move to different cities. You're going to move and work for different companies. But I'm from here. My family's from here. My wife's from here. My wife's family from here. We've got kids who are now planting roots here. I don't want to leave. I have tried here and there over the course of my career, but not with enough seriousness that would make it worth it for me. I had literally two of the best offers that I wanted to consider taking up were well outside of where, my wife would be acceptable to us moving, and rightly so. And ultimately, those things in the long run didn't work out. And I would have been right back to being out of work again. So, being out of work for a year and a half is kind of mind numbing. And then when you start to try to find jobs outside of the industry, you start to realize like, hey, am I good at anything else? Like, can I do anything else? Is this it? And I finally ended up getting hired by a cell phone provider to sell cell phones. And I went to training because, I should probably back up a little bit. I got let go in October. I got called by the program director of Rock 107 in February and to ask if I'd be interested in coming, but they didn't they were on a hiring freeze. I'm like, well, why are we even talking then, dude? This isn't, and we kept talking because I was interested in what they wanted before. They wanted me to come and work with Daniels and Webster. Jay Daniels unfortunately has passed away long since that point, but I was excited about that because you get to work with a Heritage morning show. Everybody knew Daniels and Webster. You're on Rock 107 Heritage radio station, 1980, also signed on in 1980, ironically on my birthday, February 20th, by the way. So ultimately it took a year and a half to get there. I ended up getting a job with a cell phone provider because we just hadn't gotten together yet. I worked for 2 weeks in training, hated every minute of it. I'm like, why am I even here? But ultimately we've got things worked out and got to Rock 107. And then
real quick before you jump ahead, and what was that like working at a cell phone provider? I mean, because you went from horribly different, but just mentally, you go from, and I'm not trying to like glorify, radio DJs or put down people who work for cell phone companies, but like you go from a place where people know who you are, you're sharing your life, people you put on the street, people are like, Duffy, what's going on? Or Psycho Mike at the time, like, hey, your kid and blah blah blah. I mean, what's that like mentally to go from that level of being known and in that way to now you're selling cell phones?
Well, I never actually sold one because I didn't get that far. I never got out of training. I quit before I got that far. Well, okay.
but you're sitting in training and you're like, this is my life.
So, the biggest thing I took away from that experience was I did not like the structured environment of working for a cell phone provider where you cannot check your email unless you're on the clock. You have to clock out and turn your phone off when you're not on the clock working. It's a very routine, very structured atmosphere. As you well know, when you're in radio, if you're doing mornings and you're a producer, you're booking guests sometimes for the next day up until 9 p.m. that night, because a lot of times if they're on the West Coast, they're 3 hours behind you. You check your email constantly. You might be working on something early in the morning that doesn't get finished till later at night. I actually like that kind of freedom and that flexibility and being able to, if you have an idea, work on it right then and there. If you have, hey, I want to see if I can get this guest booked, you can work on it right then and there, or you can start something at one point, finish it later. I didn't really thrive, I found, in that 2.5 weeks in that very structured, very tightly controlled atmosphere. I didn't really think, when people asked me, the people that I was training with, hey, what did you do before? And I said, they were like, oh, that's really cool. How come you left? I'm like, well, feel like I let go, feel like I fired, it happens. But that part never really, honestly, never occurred to me about hey, you've gone from being, a personality on, a number one morning show on a Heritage radio station to, hey, I'm going to learn how to sell cell phones and upcharge people for cases or whatever. For me, it was more of, I just don't understand this professional lifestyle of you can only do this and this at this time, and you have to turn your phone off and you can't check email and you can't return calls unless you're on the clock and that kind of stuff. I never understood that, and it didn't really fit with how I liked working. So that was the bigger problem for me.
It's ironic that you had to have your phone off when you're selling cell phones.
Ironic, right? Well, there's the whole union thing, but I was trying to avoid that.
And I get it.
Yeah. So,
but that was short-lived, thankfully.
Yeah,
right?
2.5 weeks, and I felt a mix of feeling bad for actually getting hired, because I remember the woman that hired me said, she thought I would do well at the job based on what I did before, but she's like, I'm really nervous that you're not going to be here long, and I ended up not being there very long. I never got out of the training because, things worked out. Yeah. And it is what it is.
More potential. Again, not knocking those who sell cell phones. They probably make a very good living and whatever. But
I made one good connection there. And you and I both know him, Jesse Fotz, the photographer.
Oh, sure.
He worked there too. And then I didn't connect with him until years later when he started his, doing photography, and he started doing photos for us at Fuzz, for, band stuff and all that kind of thing. And he's like, did you used to work at AT&T? I'm like, yeah, did you? Like, yeah. So it's kind of cool. You never know who you're going to meet along the way.
Yeah. Well, perfect segue. Let's talk about Fuzz. Let's talk about Fuzz.
All right, man.
You started at Shamrock. I think you said you were
2010.
Yeah, you're fooling around with Rock 107, but I guess
ultimately, I kind of bounced around for like a year and a half there, responsibility wise. I got hired to work with the morning show. Daniels and Webster kind of blew up 4 days into my career, 4 days, and I thought, man, I'm going to get fired. I just got hired and I'm going to be fired again already. Ultimately, I kind of bounced around, going from mornings and then did afternoons for a while, and then nights, and they just kind of moved me around. And ultimately,
real quick, let's clarify, when you say the show blew up, that means it didn't get bigger, it ceased to exist.
It ceased to exist. That's correct. Webster left, and it stopped. It ended. And at that point, I thought, well, so is my job. But it ultimately didn't. I ended up lasting 7 years there, which, ultimately, after a year and a half of being on Rock, they moved me to the alternative that they signed on. And I started doing afternoons there. And I did afternoon like 2 to 7 or something like that. And, I was there for a while until they eventually moved me to doing mornings when they put a live morning show on, and then brought Ferg in. Have you had Ferg on your show yet, on your podcast yet?
Not yet, no.
The Fergulator.
We're just going to keep shouting out names. We shout out Jeff
Fergalicious.
Walker. We're going to shout out Ferg. Well,
you got to get Rocky on too.
Get them all on. Yeah, Rocky. Let's go.
Get them all on. Rocky, let's get them all on.
Podcast of the year. Let's go.
Yeah, so I was in charge of the production department, making commercials and all that stuff, and doing mornings there. So I had an interesting shift, but and then that's kind of what I thought. Well, hey, I'm going to be doing mornings again. This is great. Little not the same kind of morning show that I did working with Rocky and Sue, but it was still fun. I like I'm an early morning person to start with. I like being up early, so that works out for me. And my schedule, and obviously being in morning drive is something to be excited about, because it's the drive time everybody wants when you're in radio, right? If you want to have your own show, you want to be doing morning drive, unless you're doing a local music show, then you do that on Saturdays. Like I know a guy that did a pretty good local music show.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So it was a good time there, we did some cool stuff. We were on I thought an interesting run of, having some alternative concerts that were making some noise, a brand that people were passionate about, maybe not necessarily huge in the ratings because, smaller signal, that kind of stuff, but a passionate fan base for alternative music at that time, and doing something different, We had really well-attended unplugged sets in that theater they have there. We had a couple of great Fuzz Fests that were really good. I mean, 2 years in a row, we had the two hottest bands in the country between Congos and then Walk the Moon, with 2 number 1 singles or whatever they were at the time, right? They were great.
Then we had, it was still Fuzz when we had Weezer, right?
Weezer? Yeah, Weezer and Panic at the Disco.
That was, so for me, and one of the reasons I came over to Times Shamrock was because of Fuzz. I felt that that station was like an audio version of what the Weekender was visually and in print. Just because of the type of music and the stuff that you guys were doing. It was very similar to, the space that I lived in, and, my time at the Weekender, I felt was just like done. I felt like I did everything I wanted to do. But that was also an interesting course for me, because I went from being like the GM of the Weekender to just a sales guy at the radio station. And that may have, I don't want to say that it was presented to me differently than it was. Maybe I felt that it was going to be something more than it was. I don't know how it really, it's not really fair for me to say, but end of the day, like, that station was doing like really cool things. Like, I didn't even care about Rock 107. Like, when I'm in sales too, I was like, I don't even care about the station that you can you walk in the building and say Rock 107, they know what you're talking about. Like, I was like,
yep.
Fuzz. Let's talk about Fuzz. Let's do Fuzz. And and you're right. We did some great things. We had a lot of private artist showcases in there. We had,
Mm-hmm.
and we had Blue October. We had, I think Everclear was there at one point. Airborne Toxic events.
21 Pilots before they blew up big.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And that's what the station was built on. It was like, we're gonna bring you, music first that you've never heard before it gets picked up by the top 40 stations, the VHTs, the KRZs, and things like that.
Sure.
It was a cool station, and I'm really disappointed. Well, I mean, it worked out for me changing to alt, and everything that happened, the transition. I'm sorry, what happened to you?
It's all right.
But like, it was cool. It was kind of like a change in the guard almost, but like, I hated the name. I hated the logo. I hated the colors. I hated everything. You love the colors because it was
like purple.
Yeah, you love purple. But like, I mean, I felt like with that station, like it was like the Weekender. You have this unlimited potential. This like a thing that you can take risks with. And they wanted to take it from Fuzz, and they went to alt 92.1. And I'm like, this is what you guys spent 3 months on?
Yeah.
This you spend 3 months on this? And I was like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, what do we like? What?
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because, and look, everybody has a reason for doing whatever they're going to do. I have a tough time in hindsight, again, being 2020, thinking it was such a terrible thing. I mean, obviously, like you said, it worked out really well for you. It ultimately worked out really well for me too, because, I was only, out of the game for like 2 months before, I got squared away here at 97.9X, and, ended up taking on a slightly different U-turn to my career and what I'm doing, and ultimately have regained that passion for doing radio, but in a different way. And arguably, I mean, this might be the best part of my career professionally. For me, I often sit down and think about that here and there when we do events like, for me, it'll be tomorrow, but by the time this airs, it'll be like a week or two ago. The whole Locals Only Live at Montage Mountain, doing fun events like that, doing our pop-up shows where we'll bring a band and play unplugged, but instead of doing it in a conference room, we'll take them out somewhere. We've done, a bunch of those, and that's fun. The putting it together, matching the band with a venue that is fun for the artist and the listener. That kind of stuff is fun. Having a say over the playlist, I never thought I'd care about that, but I do. It's kind of cool. There's certainly pressure that goes along with that, but it's kind of fun, and it has its advantages. It's a completely different animal. So I can't say it was a terrible thing. It actually ended up to a big career growth for me.
100%. Like, and it was weird how that all played out too, because it was almost like they tried fooling you and Ferg, because they wanted to flip it from Fuzz 92.1 to Alt 92.1.
Mm-hmm.
And we're off the air for like 2 months or so.
No, I don't know if it was that long. I don't remember, to be honest with you, how long it was. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly at the time suspect, but whatever. I still kept my same schedule hours wise. I still did the same thing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I, in the back of my mind thought, well, there's always this possibility that this is going to, go a different way than they're telling me. And that, that can happen. And ultimately it did, but that's the way the industry is. And I think you have to be prepared for that right. Eventually and I mean, could that happen to me now? Sure, it could. But then then I'm done, because I've worked at all three majors at this point. So
I got one more for you. You can go to.
Okay.
But I don't want to see that happen. But no, it was like,
no, I don't either.
It was just weird how that all played out. Cause like, I mean, I wasn't even in programming or anything like that. But I was like, even, like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is not going to end well, which is sad, but obviously it was great for you. So let's talk about that.
Well, you know what, too? I mean, I think it was great for you too, because think about it. You went and did, like you said, it was a good time for you professionally, because you got your local show. You got to establish relationships and connections with venues and artists, and ultimately, it seems to me, from my perspective, that it showed you're interested in something more than being on the business side, the sales side of it. You've had gotten a podcast out of it, and you found something else that you're passionate about that you probably didn't realize when you walked through the doors that first day that I met you there.
No, and I honestly, so everything worked out well. So I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna speak freely because that happened, right? So like, you and Fur got canned. They brought a guy in from Detroit who had a local show as well, and I remember I had pitched the idea of having a local radio show on Fuzz to the GM at the time, not asking for me to do it. I wanted somebody to do it because I always believed in the local music scene. And I wanted someone to highlight that. And I felt like as a locally owned and operated station, we should be able to do that. And I remember the guy who was the GM, his name's Sean. I won't even say his last name, but kind of looked at me like I had like 5 heads. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. There's a lot I could say about that management period, but I won't. But so yeah, so like what that that came up. His name's PK came in to run alt, and he's like, I had a local radio show out in Michigan, and I'm like, dude, I wanted to do that here, but they laughed at me. And he's like, oh, we should do that. I'm like, yeah, we definitely should. He goes, you should host it. I'm like, dude, I have no business being on the radio. Like, I can barely speak to you in front of you right now without mumbling or falling over words or whatever. And he goes, you're the guy for it. You've been in it for this long. Like, you'll figure it out. And I like to think that maybe I did. But at the end of the day, I think it proved value for our area, so much so that I believe you guys brought back the locals only show on the X.
Yeah, we did. I mean, it existed long before my time there, and we actually purposely didn't. I can't tell you how many times someone said to me, a few people in particular said to me, "You should bring back locals only since they're doing that." And I was adamantly like, no. Why? I don't want to do what they're doing, and I adamantly would not do it because you had your show. Until your show stopped, and then we brought it back because then you needed an outlet. There's a reason for that.
That's not true. I started the show in 2017. You guys started locals only, like, I think 6 to 8 months after.
Really? I don't remember that being the case because, I was really adamant about not doing it because I didn't want to be seen as copycatting. And
it was 8 months or so, maybe less. I don't know. I can't remember. It's not important because I'm happy that there is a station.
Ultimately, the reason you do it is because there's a lot of great talent here, right? There are so many great bands here in Northeast PA that are not going to get time on radio because it's just not the way the industry works. And it's tough to tell bands that, hey, I can't just go and spin you in the middle of the day because I like your band. I would love to.
Yep.
But ultimately, that's not how the industry works. That's not how the medium works. I mean, Spotify isn't going to do that. Granted, that's a whole different animal, but it's just not the way it works. And there would be like, well, why? Why can't you just do that? Because, there's a lot that goes into what we play. It's not just, hey, I feel like playing the new Metallica today. That's not the way it works.
Right.
And people don't seem to, so oftentimes the casual listener doesn't get that, or the local band doesn't get that. And look, I would love to play the good songs. At the end of the day, people turn on the radio because they want to hear their favorite songs, right?
Right.
So unless your favorite song is by a local band, and it may very well may be, you're not necessarily going to hear that. It's radio's a mass appeal medium. So our goal to get ratings is to appeal to the most amount of listeners possible. And, sometimes local music is just not that way to go. But at the same time, you've got to help develop those bands and give them a creative outlet for them to be able to hear their stuff on the radio so that, hey, they can get better too. There are some great bands around here and they deserve the attention. And
I was talking to, like I said, Dave from Candle in the Dark, and I was saying to him very adamantly, like, as much as I'm envious, and it's a good envy. It's I miss doing it, but I'm so
Mhm.
happy that there is a station who, dedicates an hour of their time, and it's a good time slot. So, it's a Sunday, but it's at 7 p.m. It's not, buried
Well,
at
and that's
like,
the thing too, because you got to look at how do people use their radios today too. And Sunday at 7, while it may not seem like a great time, people are home and they can actually dedicate the time to it, right? So if they know that their friend's band or their favorite band that they've seen at whatever venue around here or whatever the case is, that's a reasonable time that they'll be around to be able to stop and listen because it's a Sunday at 7. How many people are doing something at Sunday at 7? I mean, let's be honest, so
Yeah.
it works out. It's a good time for us to have it there.
No, it's great. And I'm happy because, I mean, we definitely weren't the first stations to do a local show. There is one that's been around for 20 years. I won't even get into it, but it focuses on some current, but a lot of like just older stuff. It's not the bands that are out there hustling and grinding and doing stuff currently. So I'm just very happy. I said to Dave from the band Candle in the Dark about that. Like, so it's a great thing. And then this will air after this event, but you guys are doing an event at Montage called Locals Only Live, featuring 5 great local artists. And you're going to be hopefully walking around in your pink stilettos.
Yeah, I will.
No, but I mean, it'll be after the fact, but I mean, talk about, you're an on-air personality, program director, but you're using the platform for good. So you're part of the Paint Pittston Pink. I believe your father unfortunately had passed away from cancer.
Yeah. So here's the thing about that.
Talk about that.
It's, to me, and I'm glad you used the word platform. We in radio have the ability to do a lot, right? I mean, and you well know, people are always hitting us up to help promote their event, their whatever fundraiser they're doing, and there's always somebody that needs help. But we have the ability to make a difference and to actually to do something to give back, and we should, because it's the right thing to do. And I'm proud to say that when I was at Shamrock, I helped raise $10,000 to give to Candy's Place, doing a promotion there to help raise money for them. And by the same token, I'm excited about this. We've been a supporter of Paint Pittston Pink for a couple of years now. This is the first time I've been asked to do the Gentleman's Dash. I've done the 5K a bunch of times. And I heard you mention to Dave in his that I would be competitive about it, and I am. I mean, I know I'm going to get probably crushed in the fundraising part because a lot of the guys that are from the Pittston area are just, they have a ton of that community support, and that's great. But I thought, well, what am I going to do outside of just having a fundraising link? And I thought, well, here's a great opportunity for me to pair what I do well, or what I think that I do well, and connect audiences with local music, give the local bands a chance to get in front of some people and play at a place in a venue that's a little larger than maybe they would get to normally. I mean, Montage Mountain Ski Resort in the Lodge, it's a pretty big space. They're going to have a stand, they're going to have full production, they're going to have full light show, stuff that they may not normally get playing their regular gigs. And they've all been gracious about donating their time, and I can't thank them enough for that. In fact, one band, Traverse the Abyss, had custom T-shirts made that they're going to sell and donate that money, which is fantastic.
Saw that, yeah.
And I certainly appreciate that. And we've got some other stuff going on. At the $10 charge at the door gets all donated. In fact, we're not even going to touch it. Paint Pittston Pink will be there to collect the donation at the door, where you can win autographed guitars, that kind of stuff. And yes, I'll be walking around in the high heels because that's what I have to do for it. But we should do that kind of stuff because that's what we're supposed to do. Part of being in radio is serving your community, and what better way to serve your community, the people that we have a chance to raise money for, but also your music community, the local bands that could use a place to play, because there's not a lot of those anymore. That when I was playing in bands back in the day, there was a lot more venues than there are now. So it gives them an opportunity to play, and I certainly thank them, because we've got 5 great bands. Murder Witch with Frable's project. He's a phenomenal guitar player. I've never actually seen him play live, so I'm super stoked to see him because he's a fantastic player. The guys in Stay Loud, they're awesome. The Holtzman Effect, you've got a dude with just like a killer voice. He looks like Dan Bilzerian and sounds like Chris Cornell.
Dude, that guy cannot get more handsome. I don't like. I saw him at the awards like last week,
right?
The Steamtown Awards. Oh my god! And he's like dressed up to the nines. Like, I'm like, God, dude.
And one of the most genuinely nice guys you'll ever meet. Tyler is one of the most genuinely nice guys that you'll ever meet. Great voice, and then of course Traverse the Abyss. They get the heavier metal side of things. Eric is a cool dude, great frontman. Big fan of our station, so I love that. And obviously, and then Candle in the Dark too. You talked with them last week or the week before. Dave, great guy. I hooked him up by saying, "Hey, I want to come down and check out your studio." And then I, swayed into, "Oh, by the way, I put an event together. Would you be willing to play?" But I mean, I'm lucky that, bands are interested in being a part of it too. So, I can't thank them enough for all their support too. And, there's so many musicians in and around Northeast PA. We get submissions every week for Locals Only. And I have to say hats off to Lazy E, because that show is his baby. He does it from start to finish. He talks to the bands. He, tags them every week in a post. It's sponsored by Music Around in Wilkes-Barre. So we have a sponsor for it that believes in local music. He decides who's going to be on the show. So it's all his baby, and he does a great job with it.
If he ever needs help, let me know. Tell him to let me know.
I will certainly let him know that Johnny Popko would like to partner with him on that show.
Music Around. I'm going to mention
Harry's
this.
a great dude there.
I'm going to mention this because not to interject on the whole thing, but like because I want to talk about Music Around. They were one of my first sponsors when I started the show on Alt 921. First guy to jump on board. So Music Around Wilkes-Barre. I mean, Harry, like you said, great guy. Dustin Douglas works there.
Yeah, a lot of good musicians work there.
It's a great store, great atmosphere.
I just got a guitar from there.
Great deals,
I literally just got a guitar from there. Yeah. So,
but no, what I'm saying is like I'm happy. Like, and you're doing a great thing. By using, like I said, using your platform for good, and highlighting the local musicians, and that's all I wanted to do when I started this thing. And I kicked it off with the Shirts for the Scene, where I donated all the proceeds back to the bands whose T-shirts that we sold.
I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, with Axelrad, we talked about that too on the air on our side of it. And that's the cool thing, that we have the ability to not only give back to our community, but do it in a way that's fun and interesting, and help more than just one subset of people, right? So we're helping listeners, but we're also helping local musicians too, because we're giving them a chance to play, and they're certainly helping us, because they're obviously willing to play. Right. It's donating their time to be a part of it, which is great. We've got a good relationship, I think, with, I feel like we've really built up a genuinely good relationship and rapport with the local musicians here, because, we're basically willing to give just about anybody a chance on our station. You'd have to be like, I don't know, hardcore rap at this point to not get on with us at Locals Only, because we try to stretch our boundaries as much as we can, because we want to support as many of our local musicians as we can, right? We're a rock station, yes, but we'll bend the rules a little bit here and there.
Sure. And by the time this airs, I will have announced that I teamed up with Back Mountain Brewery to create a beer. It's a porter.
Yeah.
And the 100% of the proceeds from the sale of the 4-packs is going to be donated to the Lake Lehman music programs.
See, isn't it great when we're able to do stuff like that, but do it in a way that's fun for us too? And
that's it's important. I think it's important to us, right? It is. It's not only. It's never expected, right? But it's like it's genuinely important to us to be able to take what we do and hopefully provide good.
I oftentimes, along those same lines, like, we do all the cool experience stuff on the air, right? We give away concert tickets, we give away backstage passes, and nothing drives me crazier than if you than if we give away a backstage experience, or even if it's just as small as you get a chance to meet the band and get a photo or something, and you don't show up. Because I think some of that gets taken for granted because either A, you want it, or B, a lot of times now bands have their own VIP thing where you can buy it. So maybe it doesn't have the same flash that it did. So
Sure.
I've taken this happened to me a couple of years ago at a Shinedown show at the Pavilion, and I've tried to do it ever since that day. Is that if somebody doesn't show up, I'm going to make sure that that spot gets filled. And as I'm standing there at the venue, I saw a family that had their son there just hanging out, and I had 2 spots on this guest list to go back and meet Shinedown. I walked over and I started talking to the family, and it was this boy's first show. Never been to a concert before. He's going to see Shinedown and Godsmack. I'm like, well, do you want to meet Shinedown? Because we can go back. And he was super excited. So then Live Nation turns around and says, hey, we're going to print you up a certificate that says it's your first concert. I'm like, that's great. So we give that to him. So he and his mom and dad get to go back, and then Shinedown's people hear about it, and they're like, well, why don't you keep them towards the end? Because the band is going to spend some extra time with him since it's his first concert, and they're going to sign that. They're going to sign that thing that Live Nation, printed up for him. So he got to, meet the band. They talked with him forever. They took all these photos with him. They signed his first concert certificate. It was a really cool thing. And I've actually gotten to be friendly with that family since then because of that, because they listen to the station, obviously, which I found out that day. And it's cool to be able to do that, to be able to help someone get an experience of meeting their favorite band unexpectedly, and getting to see, I think he was 9 at the time, how excited he was to meet a band, and nervous too, right, for the first time. Because I think sometimes we in the industry take that for granted, because it's another day for us. It's another, unless you're super passionate about the band, it's just work for us, right? But to be able to do that for someone who's outside of our walls or whatever, so to speak, and get to meet somebody that they like to listen to, that they paid to go see, I think that's kind of cool. And those are the kind of things that we should do, along with the charity things, to give back to our listeners and our community. I really think that that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is being able to do that, connecting listeners with artists or experiences or things that we might take for granted because we do it every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're too close to it, and nothing's more rewarding than that. That moment that you just shared, like with that kid, first concert.
Yeah.
And he's like, that he will remember that moment literally for the rest of his life.
And you know what's really cool about that? I had an opportunity to talk to Brent Smith of Shinedown, like, I don't know, a year-ish later, just doing a regular radio interview because a new song was out or whatever, and I was relaying that experience, and he remembered the whole thing. How cool is that? How cool is it that he remembered that venue? He remembered meeting that boy, that listener, and signing stuff. And so that's kind of cool too, that the rock stars are actually, remembering those things.
I had a similar, not similar moment, but I met Justin from Blue October.
Yeah.
It was my son's like first show. We had him outside the venue and earmuffs on, but we took pictures with my son, myself, my wife, and Justin, and then we saw Justin again 6 months later.
Yeah.
And we had a night out, just my wife and I, and he said, hey, it's so good to see you guys. How is your son doing?
Isn't that awesome?
It was incredible. Like, it could have been one of those things where he said, like, how are you guys doing? It's great to see you again. Something he probably could just say off the top of his head, just to kind of,
sure,
just to be safe. But the fact that he's like, I remember I met you before. How is your son doing? Like, I was like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? It's a great feeling.
But again, just the powerful medium that is music. It's just this amazing.
Well, that, and I think radio in general too, radio and music together. It's a powerful medium that I think sometimes gets taken for granted, just how much we do connect with people, Yeah.
Well, I know it's getting late. It's I don't want to keep it too much longer, but let's really quick talk about your current home. That is Cumulus 979X. There have been some big names on that station over the years.
There have.
I mean, and I'm gonna like mention names that I'm familiar with from going back to '04, or maybe even before I was an intern at the Weekender. But Freddie Fabry, Fast Freddie, Sausage, Zoe, McKay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's it like? Jim Bone, massive DJs, massive personalities, staples in our community and on air.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like to be kind of part of that that list?
So I think the best way to answer that question is that, everyone that's gone through that station or been a part of it has molded the station in some way, right? And has had some type of effect on it and its longevity. And, it's certainly not the same station today that it was back in 2004 or 2010 or whoever's run it. I think each person who's been a part of it has kind of left their mark in one way. And it kind of keeps morphing and changing based on, who's there, who's not there, what the music is like at that given time. Music is different today in 2020 or 2022, whatever, than in 2000 or even 2008, 2010, right? So the way I look at it is I'm lucky. I mean, over the entire course of my career, I grew up, there are two stations I grew up listening to, and I got to work on both of them, right? There's one station that I listen to the most because it's the style of music that I like, and that's where I'm at now. Because 97.9X didn't exist when I was in high school, because I went to high school like 100 years ago. But so I'm lucky in that respect that I worked on the two stations that I listened to growing up. I'm working now running a station that I listened to personally because it's the kind of music I like. I hope that whatever we're doing now, people like, and that, I'll ultimately leave my mark in some way that they'll remember, long past whenever I'm done at 97.9X, or, hopefully, which won't be for a long time, or till I retire or whatever. But they'll remember this block the same way, or me the same way that they remembered people that have been there before, and much the same, wherever else I've gone to, because there are still people that will come up to me and say, oh, I used to listen to you when you were with Rocky and Sue, best morning, team ever. I agree. I thought we were the best at that time. And I loved being a part of that show. And I loved being a part of what we did at Fuzz, because we were doing cool stuff. And I love being a part of what I do at 97.9X because I think we're doing cool stuff. And hopefully, when my time is done there, people will think, wow, that was really cool what you did. And, you hear that here and there, people that were at events or promos that we've done and had a good time. We helped, we've gotten to be a good partner and supporter of Another Day Dawns, who won, our corporate Next to Rock thing, and they got to go out to LA and be out for the finals. And we've got to have a relationship with those guys. And we've gotten, fairly close to the guys in Motionless in White. They're very gracious anytime they're in town with their time with us. And we try to support them as much as possible. So hopefully, at the end of the day, I'll have left my mark, much like McKay has. People will still remember McKay. Hopefully 20, 30 years from now, people will still remember Mike Duffy, and that, our time at the station was memorable. I mean, that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah. I mean, you're part of a roster
yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm very fortunate that I get to be, alongside some of those people and pick a station. I mean, everybody at all the stations I've worked at are pretty talented, and I'm lucky to be a part of them in whatever way it was, however big or small it was,
Yeah.
So, I'm not digging ditches. I don't really feel like I have a real job. I like to make that joke all the time that, I could have a real job.
Right.
And I have had a real job and it sucked. So for those 2 straight weeks, it sucked.
Well, not only are you a radio personality and have been for several years, you are also, and you kind of touched on it before, a musician.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the names of
oh my God. I've had. There's been so many stupid names for bands. In high school, I was in a band called Beachfront Property. I was in a band called Little Purple Sheep.
I like that name, Beachfront.
You like Beachfront Property?
That's really
yeah.
Good. Yeah, I like that.
The press photo wasn't where I had a pink golf shirt
That makes sense.
And
that
acid wash jeans.
Yeah,
and a big permed mullet. That was not good.
Bring it back for tomorrow. Bring that out.
No. Let's see. The Little Purple Sheep. I was in a band with the Lieback brothers called Balls. That was fun. That was crazy. The last band I played in, Los Amigos, where we all wore luchador wrestling. Yeah, luchador wrestling masks. That was a good time.
And you've gotten on stage with some local bands at some local showcases. Can we expect that from you tomorrow night?
Well, it's funny you say that because I threw that idea out to Dave from Candle in the Dark. He's like, yeah, I'd be totally down with that if we rehearsed it first. I'm like, yeah, we don't have time for that. So we'll do it another day. Yeah, I mean, it probably won't happen. Honestly, it's good that he said we should rehearse first because A, I don't want to make them look bad by my sloppy playing. And B, I'm going to be busy tomorrow running around. I've got a lot of stuff to do during the actual event itself to make sure that everything's supposed to go the way it goes. So it's probably better that I focus on that and not whether my guitar is in tune and whether I know what song we're playing. But yeah, I mean, some days it'll be fun to get back out there. There's always talk about the Los Amigos reunion happening where, Loco Miguel and the Champ and Tito will get back together and do something. One of these days we will. But
well, I think enough time has passed. So you guys could probably just do that under the radar, completely under the radar.
No, you can't do that under the radar. You have to go big or go home with Los Amigos.
No, you could but like you could actually start it all over again. You could be like this new band that came out of nowhere, like these I don't know how to explain it, but like you guys could like be like this up and coming thing that, my generation knows, or
there you go.
One before that, but like this new generation would have no clue.
Oh no, they would.
Who the hell are these guys?
These masked idiots wearing luchador wrestling masks.
But they would, dude. They would get a kick out of it. They would be like, let's take photos. Like they would.
Oh yeah.
Like selfies all day. Like
I'll be honest with you, that was probably one of, if not the most fun ever, because it was just so ridiculous. The selection of songs, the idiotic things we would say and do. We were sponsored by Cuervo, and it was just crazy. Yeah, it was fun. It was good times for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that when we worked together, you were a big fitness nut. Are you still
am
fitness?
Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah. I used to be a personal trainer, and that was fun for a couple of years until it got to be, a lot of work when you're trying to do your real job and have clients at the same time. But yeah, I mean, so there, you want to honestly know why I got into being fit. This is not the greatest story, but it's the truth. So back when I was at KRC, I was doing this stunt with Snedeker in the backyard, coldest day of the year. We were doing a polar plunge. He had a kiddie pool filled with water. It was stupidly cold. I had a bathing suit on and a life vest. And at that time, in, I don't know, sometime in the early 2000s or something like that, wasn't in the best of shape. So, because you're married for a few years, I'm not really one that drinks beer, that. But I went through like a craft brew phase because, Rocky's into craft brew and beer. So I thought I would try it. So we had something to talk and hang out and stuff. But anyway, so I wasn't in the best of shape. And I was on TV wearing just this life jacket and swim trunks and jumped in and did the bit. And then when I got back to the radio station, a listener called in and called me out on it about, having a gut and, this and that. And I'm like, wow, that's incredibly embarrassing. I went out and hired my first personal trainer the next day and got in shape. And then over the course of that, thought, well, if I'm paying all this money for personal trainers and I used to run track in high school and stuff, I should get back into running, and that turned into racing. And at that point, it's just been, nonstop since. I also look at it as I'm not getting any younger. And if I want to be able to chase my kids around, and you will soon see this when your kids start to play sports and you have to chase them around the house and they get faster than you always want to be able to keep up. That's how you do it. So, and I want to live till I'm 100. So,
yeah, well, maybe I should contact you outside of this because so I got in the best shape of my life when I was 30.
I remember at the boxing thing.
Yep. I'm approaching 40. So that was a decade ago, which I want to vomit even saying out loud and thinking about it. But just, I'll tell a story because it just happened within the past 3 weeks. My son brought home from school a drawing of our family. And when he said, "Hey, I drew a picture of our family," I looked at it really quickly because I wanted to see if he drew 4 people, because this was like shortly after our daughter was born, and initially he was like still on the fence about the whole thing. So I saw that there were 4 people. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, he drew his baby sister in this photo of our family. Like nothing bad can happen now. I was wrong. He begins to tell me who's in the picture. He goes, "This is mommy, this is me, this is London, and this is you with the big belly."
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it is funny because kids have no filter, dude.
So here I am. Like, so he literally drew, and it's weird because like the torso of him or my wife is actually like wider than I am, but he drew he highlighted with his crayon the area of the belly. Like, so it's like he like made it a point to call out the belly. And I'm like, I haven't done anything about it yet, because I'm like, well, kids are kids, and they say
Yeah.
they see what they see. But I'm like, I look at pictures now and I'm like, God damn it, I am a fat shit.
Well, the good part about that is it's never too late to get started on that. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. I waited too long. I started doing some kettlebell swings and body weight squats and push-ups and stuff like 2 weeks prior to my daughter being born, and I felt great. I was doing it, but then she was born, and that threw everything off. And name the other excuse as to why I.
That's why you gotta, I'll tell you what, my kids are in sports, and you're constantly busy after work. That's whether it's with them or events or what have you. That's why I get up at 4:20 and go for a run or go lift or whatever before work, because that's the only time you have to get it done. But you got to get it done. That's why, and look, here's the thing. The thing I love about it is that you're, at least for running or whatever, you have a long window of being able to make gains and progress and all that kind of stuff. But and I'm going to be 50 in a couple of months. I don't feel 50. I don't feel like I look 50. I don't act 50. I've got a career that keeps me young, and having that, I feel better at this age than I did when I was 20 or, when I was a teenager. And, when people say that, they're so much better fit wise after they realize that later, and I've been trying to keep myself in shape for a long time, that. Mm-hmm. But it really is a fountain of youth to help you, move better, move freely, be active. Later, when you become sedentary, that's when things start to go wrong. So, I don't want to be that person. I want to be able to run with my kids, and hopefully, if my son gets to the point where he's interested in track or cross country, I'll still be able to chase him down. I'll only be faster than him for so long. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it helps keep you young.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, I'm approaching 40, and I think 30 was no big deal to me, but 40 is kind of weighing on me a bit, because that whole, I think that whole death thing kind of.
It's funny how that perspective, how do you get that perspective?
It's a lot more real. It's like, so like, I'm like, how many years do I have? 80 if I'm lucky, right? Let's just call it 80.
Dude, right? I'm going to get to 100.
I mean, I want to live to 100 too. I mean, I want to see my kids grow up, all that kind of stuff. But like, let's just say 80 is the number. Like on average, 80. Let's just call it 80.
Sure. Okay.
So essentially, my life is halfway over.
Yeah, but you're not looking at it the right way. I mean, you've still got 40 years left. From the same token, I've still got 30. And how long does it take to get there?
I know. But so, many years. But I'm like, out of those 40 years, how many of those are going to be good years? Meaning, like, how many are going to be like no issues, like no knee problems, no this, no that? Maybe 15.
I don't know. I think all of them. I mean, I have a chronic back injury that has nothing to do with fitness, but if you stay, I found that
if I make a change, but if I continue the lifestyle that I have, then that's kind of
that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Gonna happen. That's so I'm like, man, I got to figure it out. I'm actually looking across the room. My wife, after she had our second child, she decided she is going to buy a Peloton.
Are there clothes hanging off of it?
No, she uses it. I have not stepped foot on it yet.
You got to find what interests you. I think the boxing thing probably worked for you, and that's the other thing. Like
that was hard,
people,
man. That was hard.
Well, yeah, but anything worthwhile is not going to be easy. But the thing is, you got to find what whatever discipline fitness wise is what works best for you. I love to run. I like to lift, so that's what I do. Some people hate running, like literally hate it. So that's not the way for them to get into shape. Some people love playing tennis. It's just about what you like and that you're willing to be consistent at. Consistency is the key.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talk about like everyone can work out. They can find the time to do it. And that's
sure.
True. It's very, very true. The thing about me is I am not going to wake up in the morning an hour before I have to start the day. Not going to happen for me. So then I work all day. I come home, and then it's like, my wife's home all day with the child, at least until she goes back to work. So like I get home and I relieve her of the baby.
Sure.
She makes dinner. We do family stuff. We eat dinner. Like I make sure that I spend time with my son because I don't want him to think that the new baby is going to overstep, the life that he's had for 4.5 years. Then we do baths, bedtime. Then it's like 9:00. So if I'm not doing one of these at 9:00, where we're approaching 20 to 11 right now, on nights I'm not doing podcasts, I actually enjoy sitting down with my wife, whether we're watching TV or literally talking about our lives, whether it's our son who's in preschool and the future that we want to have for him and the future we want to have for our daughter. It's like I really genuinely enjoy those conversations. So it's like, can I find the time? Yes, but it's also like there's like these moments in my life that are a priority, but I should make my health a priority as well. So it's a lot of different things.
Well, you do, because those things that you and your wife talk about that you want to have for your kids aren't going to happen if you're not here to make them happen, right?
You're right, 100%.
The other thing too is you're not a fan of getting up early. Some people aren't. I don't like working out at night if I don't have to. I'd much rather get it out of the way early. But what about midday? I mean, there's a couple of places you could go that are close by Axelrad to get a lift in if that's what you want to do. Maybe use your lunch break for that. I don't know your schedule, but obviously you can do things like that.
It's a good idea. Maybe instead of eating.
That's why I don't get paid the big personal trainer bucks anymore.
Maybe I should work out instead of eating.
I mean, you got to eat, got to fuel the furnace.
I know, carbs.
But yeah, all that kind of stuff, all that kind of good stuff.
I get it.
Yeah, you'll get there.
Hopefully. I mean, I got to figure it out for sure. I got to figure it out. It's every day I say that every day. Like it's not, it's
there will come that moment for you. Like I think, and truly, I think this happens for everybody. People that say they want to get in shape, but have struggled to find the right motivation or the right reason or the thing that pushes them finally to do it. You just got to find that right moment. For me, it was that getting called out by a listener and never wanting to have that happen again or know what that sounds like. You'll find yours at some point, whether it'll be, I don't know, maybe when your son starts playing a sport and you want to do it with him and you realize maybe you're not the best shape to do that and he's running circles around you. Whatever the case, you'll eventually find it is my point. Yeah. And then you'll be off to the races. You just need to find it.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody.
I understand. You're right. I'll get that.
I don't think you've ever said that I'm right before, ever.
That's not true.
Maybe once or twice.
I genuinely like you outside of your puns.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? I'm a reasonably likable guy. Outside of my puns and my habit of trying to be annoying intentionally.
I mean, no, it's a pleasure knowing you. It's an honor to be able to call you a friend of mine. We share a love for Jason Statham that's
dude,
most others probably don't or shouldn't.
Do you remember the contest we entered where we both won a copy of a book about him and a poster? Do you remember that?
We got the poster. I still have that. I think it's actually in my daughter's closet.
I have it too in my basement of collection of stuff.
I'm not sure that
and I don't know where the book went. They were supposed to be, and they never came signed. Remember?
I don't think I got a book either.
I got the book, but both were supposed to be signed. Neither one were. And then I went on a rant on Twitter about it.
I'm glad you did, because but
that's right. Didn't we go see one of his movies together too? Probably shouldn't admit that on your podcast.
Homefront.
Great movie.
With my wife, who also
with your wife
actually liked the movie as well. And
that's right. I was a third wheel because my wife wouldn't go. Remember? Yeah. She does not buy into Jason Statham like we do.
But Jill did watch. I brought a movie when I came back to Shamrock, because I had left Shamrock for about 6 months. I came back to Shamrock, and I brought over a movie called Wild Card.
Yes,
to your house.
That's right. You came to my house and we watched that. That's right.
Terrible. It was terrible.
It was terrible, but it was so bad it was good.
But it was me, you, my wife, your wife, and we had a good time.
It was awesome. That's awesome. I forgot about that. That's actually great.
I don't know if I was even married yet. I think we were just engaged.
I don't know. I don't remember. I was going to say I don't think you were, but I don't remember.
But
that's funny.
But dude,
good times, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure knowing you. It's
thanks, man.
I've known of you for 20 some years. I've worked with you for, 5, whatever it was, and I've obviously known you since then too. But I'm glad you've always been able to land on your feet and kind of in a better situation than the one that you had, unfortunately left. And I say unfortunately because it wasn't your choice, but it was a good thing for you.
And things always work out the way they're supposed to. Exactly. I never would have thought when I got let go of KRZ the first time that I would be here ultimately. And if you had told me then this is what I'd be doing, I'm like, why would I want to do that? But now if you why wouldn't I? I'm afforded a great opportunity to do something that not a lot of people get to do. And I'm still doing it after, 27, 26, I don't know, whatever it is, getting started in 1995. I'm still doing radio with some minor time off here and there,
Yeah.
So I can't complain.
It's all good, man. I mean, I don't think I would have, said I'd be, back when I was at the Weekender, I wanted to, retire there. I wanted to, I was never one to I didn't want multiple jobs and multiple different things. My parents, started at 15 and then they retired when they were, my mom retired at 64. My dad unfortunately passed away when he was 52. But they were lifers in their careers. I went from Weekender to Shamrock to eBay Enterprise to Shamrock to where I am at Axelrad. But I never thought I'd be at Axelrad, but the amount of freedom that I have there, I'm able to coach my son's t-ball team, and I've never missed soccer.
And those things are important. That's so important stuff.
I've never I have such a great gig there, and the freedom to be able to if I had to start working at 7 a.m. to leave at 3 or 4, I can do that. Where in the position I was at in radio, they wanted to see you there from 8:30 to 5:30. No ifs, ands, or buts. And it's as a 100% commission sales rep, that kind of seems silly to me. You have my report card at the end of the day as to how I'm performing. You shouldn't even want to see me ever. You should just make sure that I'm selling and meeting my goals. But what I'm getting at is it's where we found our places in life, and I'm glad that we're able to continue to have a connection and work in these areas that I say work. I don't get paid to do this, but it's a passion for me to do this podcast. And thank you for taking.
No, man, I've been waiting patiently for my invitation, so thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate that. It makes me feel like what I'm doing is worth it. But
yeah, man, it was good chat.
Ryan Seacrest, I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
It's not going to land.
It's not going to land. Well, Seacrest out. We'll see you after the break. That kind of stuff. I need the spiky hair for that.
Didn't fucking land. God damn it. Anyone who's just listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Duffy looks like Ryan Seacrest.
Among other people, I hear.
I thought I would have got a chuckle out of that, but I guess not.
That's funny.
But dude, it's
good times, man. Good talk.
You've got a long day tomorrow. Best.
And dude, literally my battery is about to die. So if I suddenly stop talking, it's not because I hate you.
Let's call it a night. Thank you so much. Man. Best of luck tomorrow at Montage.
Thanks. Make sure you come out.
I only get so many.
I get it. Next time.
But best of luck. Raise a lot of money for cancer research, and
we will
continue doing great things, man. I'll see you soon.
You too, buddy.
All right. Take care.
All right, take care.
Yeah.
Show what your small business sells in 7 seconds.